It's Tuesday, just after 1 o'clock, almost 1:10 thereabouts. Um, as you can see in the title, see if I can get this straight, a little straighter. Um, the subject, the topic, is yoga psychology. We'll see if I can keep on track, or if it veers off into something else entirely, as it often does. Try to keep the conversation tight, 20 minutes, half an hour. I said that yesterday, and it ended up being like an hour and a half. But we were talking diet, veganism, plant-based supplements, sports performance, addiction. So it ran the whole thing. I forgot what word I was looking for. From point A to point Z, it went all through. And I had some good friends in the burpee fitness community pop in and provide their insights in the chat section. So when the conversation's rolling, sometimes it's best just to keep rolling with it. And we'll see what today brings. Yoga psychology is an interesting term, mainly because if you say yoga, people think about attending a yoga class, stretching, maybe in a heated room, some kind of studio, maybe doing some breath work at the beginning, lying down in shavasana afterwards is sort of a meditation practice, and that's yoga. You can go out on the street and ask people, do you practice yoga? Most would say they do yoga, maybe not practice. And lots of people would say yes. However, is it really yoga, or is it yoga asana, the postures, the poses, which is just a single aspect in the 8 limbs of yoga? It originally should be taken as a system from the 8 limbs covering ethics, then covering the asanas, breath work, and then the beginning steps of meditation, from withdrawing the senses, one-pointed concentration, to entering the beginning state of meditation, to reaching all the way to samadhi, which is that bliss consciousness, awakening, or enlightenment. I'm always slightly hesitant to use the word enlightenment. I don't necessarily believe that if you reach samadhi that you've reached enlightenment. I like using the term awakening better. And as Robert Saltzman, the author of the 10,000 Things, often says, awakening never ends. So the whole process of yoga is never ending. Taken together, this is a deep system of psychology, and it brings about a profound transformation that's ongoing through life. But we never reach that point if all we're doing is practicing the asanas, wondering why I haven't reached this point. As well, if we're just meditating and we're not practicing the ethical concerns, the restraints and the observances, then we're limiting ourselves. We may get some important and deep insights. We may get glimpses of awakening. We may even get true awakening. However, the transformation that we're talking about here, the psychological transformation, the moksha, liberation, being able to reach that state where they say pain in life is inevitable. I'm just glad I got that out without stumbling on that word. I'm not going to try it again. But suffering is optional. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. It depends. Everything depends on how we frame something. That, you can experience grief without suffering. True. You can experience sorrow without suffering. It's just a fine line between, grief and sorrow and suffering. The suffering they're talking about here is the aversion or attraction of something, that we have the aversion for how things are now. We have an aversion for reality. That's psychological suffering. Someone dying isn't psychological suffering. It's horrible. The loss, how we feel. Yesterday was the 2-year anniversary of my father's death. I revisited that yesterday just as deeply as if it had just happened. So that is suffering. However, and it's also sorrow and it's also grief. However, there wasn't that psychological suffering attached to it because I didn't push that grief away. I didn't push that sorrow away. It was just there. It was accepted. It was even expected. So we could say yoga is the path of reality, accepting reality as it is. That's the psychology of yoga. Not pushing things away, whatever they are. Doesn't mean that we won't seek to make changes to bring something more to our liking. Doesn't mean that we don't have preferences, that we don't have attractions, that we don't have aversions. It means that we're not addicted to that state of not having them, or that we're not always striving to have something other than what we have right now. First, we accept what's right now, and only then can we start making changes in that positive direction. If you're overweight and you want to lose weight, it doesn't help to deny the fact that you might be overweight, that you might be unhealthy, that you might need to make changes. Because nothing's going to happen until you look in a mirror and say, this is who I am right now. I can love myself as I am right now. However, when I come to terms, when I deeply, deeply, deeply love myself, I want to live better. I want to make the necessary changes to be healthier, to feel better, to be more active, to avoid premature suffering of all the things that are associated with inactivity. So that's the acceptance of reality. And then we start making those incremental changes in our diet, in our exercise. It is the same with any type of transformation. We don't push things away because that's a denial of reality. As well, we don't deny what we have right now in order to put ourselves somewhere else. We move through reality. We move through life. We maneuver, navigate. That's how we arrive. When you think about it, every moment is our arrival to right here, to right now. So the way yoga psychology addresses our suffering is, we mentioned this before, about how consciousness basically understands things in terms of attraction, aversion, and neutrality. We're attracted towards something, so we keep moving and moving and moving towards it, holding it, grasping it, not wanting to let it go. And when that doesn't satisfy, then we reach for more, and we reach for more, and we reach beyond. Always reaching, always grasping, never satisfied being right where we are, which causes that undercurrent of suffering because we never arrive anywhere. There's always something more. That's the whole nature of the system that we have in place now. No one's ever rich enough. No one ever reaches that point where they say, I'm rich enough and now I want to start giving something back. Very few, at least. Once I hit this point, then I'm going to give to charity. Once I accumulate this amount, then I'm going to take a break. Then I'm going to leave a more spiritually attuned life, but not now, because it's a dog-eat-dog world and I need to get ahead. I need to do what's necessary to get ahead. Again, an undercurrent of suffering. Because guess what? At the end of your life, you still haven't got there, and you look back and you think, I hurt a lot of people to get where I am. If you don't think that, then there's no self-reflection in your life whatsoever. As well, we go to aversion. I can't accept how things are right now. I need to move away from it. I need to move away from this. I need to change this. I need to change that. It's never, ever to the point of saying, this is just how things are. And yet, they're already changing. It's the nature of life, transformation. One thing simply becoming another version of that one thing, always flowing. I heard it first from Alan Watts, but I forget the original Greek philosopher who said, you never step in the same river twice. It's always moving. That's how life is. However, we have an aversion for that current of life. So we are always pushing against the current, stopping it. You don't want this. And of course, there's some really logical things of not wanting. I don't want sickness. I don't want to lose my hair. I don't want to have to wear glasses. I don't want 10,000 things, as they would say in Taoism. The 10,000 things of life are just the 10,000 things of life. I don't want them. Okay, maybe I want 9,099, but that one thing I don't want. I don't want sickness. But sometimes it happens. And of course, we're all going to die. And we can say all we want. I don't want to die. I didn't want to lose my father. Even at the age of 93, I didn't want to lose him. I thought he had several more years. His doctor, just months before he got sick, was saying, let's push for 100. You're in good shape. Mentally sharp. Physically, he was still active all the way up until he got sick, and was a 5-month decline after that. My father certainly didn't want that. He was prepared to die, but he didn't think it was going to happen that quickly and then. He accepted it better than I did. He suffered less in his time of dying than I suffered in his time of dying, because I had a hard time accepting it. I just wasn't ready. That's suffering for me. But it wasn't for him. For him, it was dying. It was a process of life, how it happens. So then, we have what's neutral, and that's just sort of cruising along. Those are the three things consciousness deals with. We're always ping-ponging back and forth. We think we have a choice, but we're always responding. We're always reacting to mainly those two things. We don't react to neutrality. We rest in the neutrality, but we're always ping-ponging between aversion and attraction, thinking we're making choices, when really we're just playing out patterns. So many patterns. Sanskrit, samskaras, imprints that have been acquired since birth, or since we've been in the womb, picking up the vibrational sources of other people and other things and parts of life. Or, if you believe in reincarnation, previous lives carried with us through karmic patterns all the way up to now. Doesn't matter, because they're here. However they came about. They are imprints, patterns deeply, deeply grooved into the very psyche of the mind. And whenever we put the needle into that pattern, we hear the same old song every single time. You put the needle in the pattern of traffic jams and obnoxious drivers, and you play road rage. All kinds of stuff. Barefoot Burpees is here. Hey, Barefoot, how are you? So we're all playing our patterns that aren't even ours. We inherited so many of them. We got them from parents, from teachers, from social media, from mainstream news sources, from books, from magazines, from advertisements, billboards, all kinds of stuff. Friends, relationships, our own clinging to beliefs. Barefoot Burpee says he's got a virus, but still going. Sorry to hear that. Indian club today. Have you done the club work already, or are you getting ready to do it? That should actually help you feel better. Getting a nice flow, blood flowing, joints opening up. I hope so for you. Do you feel better? So we keep playing those patterns. Barefoot Burpee says that he breathed great while doing it. Well, that's good. Reverend Terminated is here. Barefoot entered the building. Barefoot says after coughing, sputtering, came back. Yeah, it seems that we always feel better when we're moving, and then afterwards it hits us back again hard. Actually, it brings an interesting point that I was talking about here, that we all go through something, but suffering from it is optional according to many traditions. When we're sick, it's painful, it's uncomfortable, and yet we don't suffer unless we refuse to acknowledge that we're sick. We make that distinction. I'd rather be well. Of course we would. However, if you just acknowledge that you're sick, you start taking care of yourself, and you feel better soon, and you don't add that additional psychological suffering to it. That's what the aversions and the attractions and ping-ponging is all about. And of course, we get those certain patterns when we were kids, when we're sick, and we might hear the voice of 1,000 people, school teachers, doctors, whatever, saying, you're sick, you feel bad, don't do this, don't do that. So we play those patterns over and over again. A pattern is everything, all through life, from racism, bigotry, sexism, all our beliefs, all they are, simply a pattern. Barefoot Burpee says, traditionally I used to practice guitar instead of workout when injured or sick, but these days I don't seem to get that injured or sick. So guitar went out the window. Well, that's too bad. You can do the opposite. You can play the guitar when you're feeling really good. I don't play, but there's always music in the background of my life. I would really miss that if I didn't. And I know if I could play, it would be a shame to miss it. Barefoot says he prefers working out, sadly. Well, stick with your preference. You enjoy what you enjoy. So we had the aversions, we had the attractions, how we ping pong back and forth, how it creates patterns, and how we react to all these patterns. All our beliefs, all of them are patterns. In yoga psychology, we have 5, they call 5 poisons, kleshas, which I believe I'm pronouncing correctly. I should probably go on record to say that every Sanskrit word, with the exception of very few, I will probably mispronounce. To be completely fair, there's a large majority of English words that I will probably mispronounce. So I always warn people, if you hear me talk and you point out that I mispronounced something, it's not really news. I already know. I appreciate you pointing it out, but to me, you're pointing out the obvious. So I believe it's pronounced kleshas. Klesha is loosely translated as poisons. And the yogic seer Patanjali, who wrote the Yoga Sutras 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, just several of them, basically pinpointed 5. Barefoot Burpee says that I only have so much time. I used to have a 3-way split in hobbies, growing vegetables, guitar work, and martial arts. Do you still grow vegetables? That's a very healing thing to do. Getting your hands deep in the earth. Actually, all 3 of those things just seem like a very not just productive, but a mentally sound approach to a joyful life. From being in the garden, hands in the earth, to producing music and then taking care of your body, which in turn also takes care of the mind. Again, that seems like a very, the whole theme here was yoga psychology. That's yoga psychology right there. That whole not splitting between mind, body, and spirit, all just one thing being expressed. Burfer says just didn't have time to do all 3. So I dropped the other 2. That is definitely the mastery mindset. If you want to master something, it's got to be a priority. It's the same with me. I love doing kettlebell sport, but when I got into ultra running, I couldn't do it, at least the way I used to. I couldn't use the same weights as I was before getting in the miles, so something had to drop. And I had some unfulfilled goals for ultra running, plus it was something new for me, and I was having a blast getting out on the trails. I was doing it with Mocha. It was something very healing between us because we were approaching our divorce and just after our divorce, and it's one of the things that kept that bond between us. So we got to the point where we are now. So something had to give, and it ended up being the kettlebells. Rupert says, I was doing 3, not so well. I'd say I'm achieving more with one focus. Yeah, I would think so. And that, vegetable garden takes a lot of time to keep going. I can see that. One of the reasons why I never, I have a small front yard and a small backyard. I'd love to make it into a pollinating garden, but again, it just takes a little more upkeep than I would like to invest. And I'm a lot like you. I'm doing a whole lot right now. I'm up at just past 3 in the morning so I can meditate, do my first round of yoga, so I can write, so I can go out for a walk, so I can then work out, so I can walk again, so I can do yoga again, so I can meditate again, so I can do some studying. And then it's basically time for bed. Beaufort says, kettlebell is probably hard to keep up with ultras, some interference in development. You know what? The kettlebell sport training really prepared me to run ultras. It was, running just felt so easy compared to the kettlebell sport. However, exactly what you said, to get better at ultra running, I couldn't use the heavy weights that I was using. I didn't have the recovery. Putting in that many miles in a week, especially in order to run a 100-mile race, it was taking all. I still worked out. Mainly, I did swings and get-ups, some push-ups and some chin-ups along the way. I would try every once in a while to introduce like deadlifts or something, but it just, any little bit more than the bare basics at the mileage that I was doing, and it would lead to some issues. Barefoot says weeds grow like crazy, pests are crazy if organic. Yeah, birds could strip the crop in one day. Barefoot also says that ultras and kettlebell are both quite specific. Yes, kettlebell sport. You can use kettlebell as a great training tool, and you can use it as strength training for ultras. And I did Pavel's Simple and Sinister program, which is Turkish get-ups, 5 singles each side, and working up in a heavier weight. And I worked up to some pretty decent weight. And then you do 100 swings, sets of 10 each side. 100 swings total, 10 on each side. Very short. I did it 7 days a week. I was also trying to do 7 days a week of 90 minutes of Bikram yoga, which is at 105-degree temperature. It was just too much. So I decided I was going to concentrate on ultra running. And as my ultra running started waning down a bit, I started doing, my father got sick. I needed to take care of him more. And I got into burpees. I think some of the problems people develop with burpees, just like you were saying, adding in too much. I like doing burpees, but I also want to put in this and this and this and this to the point where burpees aren't much of the focus, but just enough where everything together causes some damage. When I'm just doing burpees, my shoulders are fine. When I'm doing burpees, dips, pull-ups, and overhead presses, my shoulders get a little iffy. So I'm trying to pare things down. I love doing dips. I want to keep them in, but I want to fit them in accordingly without causing additional damage. Barefoot says that ultras would hurt his hips and pelvis. Even a half marathon hurt badly to me. And that it's great to have conditioning, but finding the right dose is really tricky. Yeah, were you doing road running, or did you get a chance to get on any trails? Trails are definitely easier on the body, I think. For one, they slow you down. For two, the uneven surface works the legs and the hips and the core in a very unique way. So yeah, he said it was road. Also, that's a great term. I love that. The art of training is dosing. The art of training dosage would be a great topic for a talk. Maybe I will do that soon. Barefoot said trails that did 10K runs, they were okay. Yeah, I absolutely love being on the trails. I miss them. Barefoot says that, in fact, the times I did yoga straight after 10Ks, no delayed onset muscle soreness. Yeah, I would do my yoga practice mainly either right after a race, especially a long one, sun salutation, or sometimes the 5 Tibetan rites of rejuvenation. Some would argue that it's more calisthenic than yoga, but it always left me feeling better the next day. I ran after every race the day after, no issues ever, including 100-mile races and 24-hour races. Barefoot says they had one here. It was a 10K on the hills where Land Rovers were tested. Great fun. So much mud, logs, nettles. Yeah, I like running in those conditions a lot. And also, no one's super fast in those conditions. So if you're persistent, you have a good chance of doing well. The times that I won my age group in a race, or placed in the top 3, or even placed in the top 10 overall, were in 24-hour races where the conditions were really bad. And somebody might run 20 or 30 miles more than me, but then things got so bad they would decide to go in and dry off, get some rest, change their shoes, and I would stay on the course. And eventually, by the end, I'd either caught up or got close or surpassed. It pays to be stubborn. It pays to not care how the weather is. It pays to enjoy the rain or the snow or the mud, all of that. Burford says it was a full experience, river crossings. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. It's hard to get around the slower runners. Barefoot says the bunching of slow runners slowed me down somewhat, but I called it a food day to be in the top 1/3. Wasn't that fast. Hey, you got it done now. Let's see. Kiva says, what are you reading? Do you mean like what book am I reading these days? What do I have up on the internet? Oh, what am I reading conversationally? Or am I just talking to myself? Make believe friends that only exist in my head? Reverend Terminator says here the chlorophyll for detoxing. Good things about chlorophyll. It's one of the reasons why I eat a large amount of leafy green vegetables is to get chlorophyll. So, Kiva, I'm probably pronouncing your name wrong. I apologize. You said yeah, but I listed 20 different things. So, which one would you like to know? I'm always happy to answer almost every question. I say almost. I do make some exceptions. Liquid drops is what Reverend Terminator is getting. I used to juice a lot of greens as well to get the chlorophyll from the leafy greens. It is great for detoxing. It's good for the skin, good for the eyes. It's actually really good for the lungs. Kava says, no, you're doing it right. Don't worry. Thank you. I appreciate that. Reverend Terminator says, you eat a lot of greens, Eric. I do. Part of my 2 bigger meals of the day, I used to actually put greens in my oatmeal. But as mentioned, and as most people know, I get carried away by some things. Barefoot Burpee says he used to do a lot of celery juice and apples for taste. Hard work cleaning the juicer. Exactly. It is hard work cleaning the juicer to the point where it just got to the point I just no longer enjoyed juicing because I knew I'd had to clean it. And even leaving it in the sink for Mocha to clean only worked once. Kevin asked if I'm English. No, I'm American. However, I am talking to someone from England now, as well as someone who is from Scandinavia, I believe. I always get Norway, Scandinavia, but I believe Scandinavia. Reverend Terminator says red beet juice also. I go in and out of using beets. When I was ultra running, I would always try to get some beets in because it increases your nitrous oxide. There's also several ways of breathing where you can actually increase your nitrous oxide retention, which has dramatic performance. Kava is from England. That's awesome. Speaking of running and England, I always wanted to do fell running. Norway, yes, Reverend. Reverend Terminator said he saw a podcast now, a guy from Liverpool. The Americans cannot understand him. Interesting. Kava says not really, that he loves his accent. His, it's actually a beautiful accent. Actually, it's not even an accent. It's an accent to me. But for you guys, I'm the one with the accent. I'm the one that sounds funny. But to be honest, I'm the one that sounds funny here to other Americans as well. So, um, Barefoot says we don't understand Liverpudlians, right? Either. Or the Cockney accent. I remember Michael Caine was famous for his Cockney accent. Kiva says it was a marathon in Leicester on Sunday. And I apologize for mispronouncing stuff, by the way. Which is funny because Barefoot just says generic pronounce Leicester. How close was I? Classic East Coast Eric. Yep. There's plenty of people in the United States that I don't understand and don't understand me as well. Leicester? Kiva says it's pronounced Esther. Leicester. Okay. Best way to see a city, the best way to experience a city, in my opinion, my experience, is to run a marathon in the city because you're right in the midst of the city. You're getting the whole street level. You get to see everything. And then after the race is over, find a nice restaurant in the city and have a nice meal. So I've already forgotten how to pronounce it. Leicester. Right out of my brain. Very little stays in there for very long. I had mentioned at the beginning of the video that I will be mispronouncing all kinds of Sanskrit terms. And I've been studying yoga, Sanskrit, for over 30 years. I've had Sanskrit scholars tell me how to pronounce something, and then I turn around and mispronounce it right in front of them, much to my embarrassment. And they just smile. You guys are losing me with as soon as you start talking about how to pronounce something. All right, so you guys aren't too far from each other. What I know about Birmingham is it is the home of Dorian Yates, who at one time was my favorite Mr. Olympia, favorite bodybuilder. I liked his training approach. I liked his hardcore approach. As well, I did not realize that it's home of canals. And it was actually Barefoot Burpees who told me that a while back. Barefoot Burpee says we have Old English, Celtic, Roman names, place names. Barefoot Burpee says that he is a frequent holiday visitor to the UK. I would actually love to go to the UK. Hey, Kiva, thank you for stopping in. I appreciate it. I appreciate the conversation. Barefoot says Welsh is better, though. I'd love to go to Wales, visit the coastline. Such a wild-looking place. When I was a kid, there was a movie, American Werewolf in London, and they walked through the moors, and it just really made me want to visit there and go through the moors. I love the British landscape. Actually, the whole United Kingdom landscape, from Wales to Scotland. And I actually love hearing the Welsh language, which you don't actually hear too often, although I guess it's more frequently spoken in Wales. Same with you have people who still speak um, the Irish language. Interesting stuff. Probably, um, probably more place than anywhere else that I'd like to travel to would be um, Great Britain. Just seems, the home of my ancestors, with the exception of my mom's grandparents, who were from Hungary, immigrated to Ellis Island in the 1920s. But everywhere else, my family dates back through um, Scotch Irish back in the 1600s. Beaufort says he's not been to Ireland, even though, or maybe because my wife is Irish. I didn't know your wife was Irish. Beaufort says that he preferred Wales to Scotland, but they say the Welsh hate the English. I've heard Scottish hate the English. I've actually heard all kinds of people hate the English, which I often hear the same thing about Americans. It used to be everyone loved America. We squandered a lot of our good fortune around the world. Reverend Terminator says, interesting, Eric. Sir Eric from Wales, or did you say Ireland? Scotch Irish, actually. McCarty is a Scotch Irish name. Reverend Burpee says, everyone hated the English. Now it's the Americans. Yeah, switched over. We did you guys a favor. Everyone hates us now. We took the burden off of you guys. Reverend Terminators, we are Irish, not pirates. When someone tried to do the accent. So, yeah, the Celtic shamanism, Druids, all that really had a big, big interest to me. Scotch Irish are closer than Welsh Scots. Yeah, I would see that. I think it's the clans, the religion. Yeah. So maybe one day I'll get over and I'll do a fells race up the side of a mountain. Reverend Terminator says that we can call Eric the Highlander, which was a great, great movie with a perfect soundtrack. Beaufort Burpee says Scottish had major inventors, more than any other country by population, I believe. That's interesting. Classic movie. Yeah, it was. Not a bad TV show either. It only lasted, it was in syndication here in the States. Didn't last too long. Scotland had some really deep thinkers as well, some great philosophers. Hey, it's got one of the premier burpee practitioners in the world. It has Lee Hazard. Not to mention James Brew is Scottish, I believe, right? Reverend Terminator says he would love to have the time and money to visit every city in Scotland. Yeah, I would just love to roam the Highlands. Perfect Burpee says was a late night show here, one of those 1 a.m. shows. It was here as well in syndication. I would only catch it when I came home from a bar, actually. We don't see much of James on YouTube. When he does, he'll put out a ferocious workout with perfect form and then disappear for another couple weeks. Reverend Terminator says that we could stay in Balmoral and travel from there. Burford says, remember that late night show with the long-haired biker and sidekick? Yeah, I think it was Lorenzo Lamas, Renegade. Was that it? I think it might have been Renegade. Americans are infamous for putting out really bad, cheesy, syndicated TV series, especially in the 80s and 90s. The best way to watch those shows is always to be half asleep. They make more sense and they're more entertaining when you're half asleep and you still have the effects of, a dozen or so beers in your system. I actually saw a clip of Renegade on YouTube not too long ago. I don't know, because a bodybuilder was on it. Actually, a female bodybuilder. Corey Everson and her sister were on it. And because I follow some bodybuilding channels, it popped up. Burford Burpee says he used to fall asleep with my 14-inch CRT TV, just about color TV. Yeah, that's the way it was. I don't even think mine was color. I don't even remember anymore. It's very small. His first personal TV was black and white. It's funny when you think about the changes in TVs in just a short amount of time, where they've gone. If you were to ask a kid nowadays, black and white, they'd be like, what are you even talking about? Or even some don't even have TVs anymore because everything's streamed, everything's online. Buffer says we don't remember colors. Yeah, funny that there's a whole generation that has never watched a show in black and white. Buffer says that he dreamed of getting one of those little 2-inch handheld TVs, the luxury. For me, it was the opposite. I wanted a bigger TV. But hey, you know what? When I consider how privileged I was, that I actually had my own TV, not as a kid, but as a teenager at least. What was Lorenzo Lamas's t-shirt color? I'm going to have to think black. Of course, since it was a black and white TV, it was either black or it was white. Buffer says he wanted to watch TV under the covers without my mom knowing. That was the dream. That was every kid's dream. Stay up just a little bit longer. I used to try to sneak and stay up to watch in my preteens, 12 years old, the music shows that we used to have here. Funny, late night TV here, we had Benny Hill. The gift from Great Britain, the gift from England, the Benny Hill show. Buffett says that I was wrong, it was gray. Hey, when you're a preteen watching Benny Hill, it was almost like watching a dirty movie. It's almost like having Playboy Channel. He was always going to be chasing somebody in a bathing suit or a short skirt around a tree, or they would be chasing him around a tree. Barefoot says that he was in Florida when he died. The Americans were sad. Yeah, he was. Everyone in America watched Benny Hill because he was always on like late night, 11:30. He was on 91. Redford says chasing him, I think, and probably. I think that he started out chasing them, and then the tables got turned, and they chased him. Or maybe that was the other way around. Of course, that song will be in my head forever. You only have to hear it once, and everyone knows the Benny Hill song. You could probably go anywhere in the world and start humming that song, and everyone would know exactly what you were referring to. Burpee says they couldn't resist him. Yeah. There's a couple of actresses that made it. One of them was on the TV show Frasier, and she started out as a Benny Hill's girl. Seems that really there'd be no place to go but up from there. Made a lot of people smile. Made a lot of people happy. So, hey, if that's the best that you end up doing in life, you've done a pretty amazing thing, in my opinion. If you've made millions of people smile, millions of people happy, it's no small accomplishment. Burper says at least the sleeves was up front. It was up front, and it was, all things considered, a pretty mild form of sleeves, especially considering the deep sleeves that was going on around the world, that still goes around the world. Every politician nowadays is neck deep in some kind of sleeves, it seems. Not all of them, but enough. I know the American Supreme Court is definitely, the vast majority of them are neck deep in sleeves. All right, guys, so I'm coming up on an hour. Once again, I've extended my 30-minute time allotment in a good way. I always enjoy where the conversations lead to. Little did I know that we would go from yoga psychology to supplements and training to worldwide locations to Renegade, the color of Lorenzo Lamas' t-shirt, and Benny Hill. Then I closed the conversation with political sleaze. That's the art of conversation. That's how a conversation should go. It should cover the whole aspect, point A to point Z, from yogic philosophy to Benny Hill. That's a sign of a good conversation. As a matter of fact, it's my opinion, if a conversation doesn't have Benny Hill in it, if it doesn't at least once mention Lorenzo Lamas, it's a wasted conversation. It never should have taken place. That's my opinion, and I'm going to stick with it. Reverend Terminator says, see y'all another time. Yep, I appreciate you popping in, Barefoot and Reverend. For Purpose says, our Scots ancestors would have done this over a cigar and single malt in a billiard room as they're playing darts. Or is that just Great Britain? We'll pick up that question. We'll pick up that theme on the next conversation. Which reminds me, I still need to go to YouTube and look up snookers and actually see people playing that, because I haven't. I will ask you that tomorrow. All right, guys. Thanks for joining in, and I'll see you tomorrow morning for burpees, and tomorrow to talk some more about Benny Hill, snookers, and billiards. You guys have a good day.